It's not a bother.
I was admiring your lovely stone wall behind you there, and you knocked on it, so there's a glass window behind it. It's very clever.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just a leaning piece of glass. It just allows the light to filter in, back in around the house.
I'd say it's lovely in the rain as well, is it?
It's, yeah, it kind of cascades like a waterfall. There's a gutter at the bottom there that needs cleaning all the time, but you know, we can't get it all right. But yeah, it's nice. Yeah, the water, when it rains heavy, the water runs down. Very nice.
Yeah, so you've the best of both worlds in good days and bad days.
Exactly, yeah. And the sun comes this way, so it kind of starts in here, and then the west sun is there, so it comes around, so it's orientated to kind of grab it in, and it's bookended at both ends by original brick. So yeah,
it's really clever design. And when you mentioned about painting and lighting paintings and whatever, you have a fabulous studio. We're talking. You have a fabulous studio that's all glass as well, don't you?
It has a roof light, so that acts as an atrium down through the house. There's a glass, a floating glass stairs that allows light, because the house is quite dark. So it was just really trying to grab light in the right areas, and then that loaned itself to a studio to paint in. So and it gets nice diffuse light, and so it's just again controlling that for getting really good quality light. So it's like painting outside, but you have the comfort of being not in the environment of the harsh rains or whatever of Ireland. So,
and when you're painting, do you go into a different world kind of thing?
Yeah, I kind of, like, I paint under the alter ego Pigsy, so that's really to detach the discipline of architecture from the, I suppose, what I consider my more honest, untarnished inner mind, where I don't have the discipline of architecture staying within format or within certain criteria. A lot of sites that we would do, or a lot of projects that we would work on, are defined within the boundaries of the demise of the site. Where with the canvas, it's really that's your battleground as such, and the canvas is always a bit too small, you know, if I could paint a bit further. But it's really just your mind that stops you. You know, sometimes you might have a boundary wall that you have to respond to, in architecture, where in art you just respond to your inner emotions.
And I suppose with architecture, you're constrained by all the building regulations and everything as well, where when you're Pigsy, there's more of a flow.
Yeah, we tend to, building regulations kind of, they are what they are. I would design with them at the beginning, especially initial designs and stuff. In architecture, you would have an eye on that, but you would try not to let it dictate too much. But then obviously you have to go back into PSDP mode or health and safety, all that kind of stuff. So with art, there's no real boundary on that. You know, there's no health and safety in art, really. So
yes.
Yeah, well, unless you're up a ladder down a laneway, but then again, you're probably trying to avoid something else, like the police or something at that stage.
Exactly, yeah. And when you're painting, do you start one painting? Do you do a sketch of it first? What's your procedure?
No, I don't. No, not really. So it varies, to be quite honest. It depends the kind of mood that you're in, because it's an emotional reaction to the scenario that you're in, or the mood that you're in. I don't like to have any preconceived ideas, so I like to just switch off, go into alter ego Pigsy mode, and start working on a canvas and see where it goes. Sometimes it takes you down a kind of a rabbit hole into a dark place, or sometimes it takes you into a positive place. And I would work on a few different ideas. So if I'm down a certain path on a canvas, and I just think whatever I'm thinking of in that moment, it doesn't really reflect, or doesn't really doesn't really have anything to do with the canvas that I'm painting on. I'll just start a new one, and then that takes you somewhere else. And then it's a bit like chopping and changing, and that's why they're a bit kind of collagey or whatever, because sometimes you might take from one painting what you're doing on another, and you kind of run with that. So, yeah.
And would you go back then and finish, you know, if you were halfway through one and you moved on to another, would you go back then to the first one?
Yeah, so if I'm working on, if I'm painting away on something about, let's say something about the pandemic, and something comes into my mind about just, let's say, being empty inside or something like that, I might start a new painting on that. And then if that subject changes in my mind, or that conversation that I'm having at that time with myself, or Pigsy's having in the inner mind, we'll switch back to another painting because it might have something. And then I might start a third painting if it's not reflective in any either of those two. And you just kind of, you try and see where the emotion or the honesty takes you. Sometimes it takes you nowhere and you paint over it. Sometimes it takes you in a really interesting place.
And are there certain colours, you know, and certain hues that you use, or spray cans that you use, your go-to one, or how does that work?
Not really. Like a lot of the, again, it's a responsive thing. So if I pick up if I generally just look for a colour when I'm doing it. So I think some of that comes back to the architecture and the discipline of architecture. There's a kind of an understanding of the opposites of colours that attract and don't go together, and sometimes you just paint over them. I love all colour really, so it just depends what's right in the moment. So I think the colours part of, again, it depends on the mood. You'll see it in the paintings, which I find really interesting. So even when words start coming in or colors start coming in, or you start to block out parts of it, I think that that's part of the inner emotion. So it's all these kind of senses and all these senses and a form of communication, or extracting that communication out of my mind to get rid of it really.
When you're having an exhibition and you walk up behind two people discussing one of your paintings, do you kind of eavesdrop in and see what they're, you know, if they're picking up on what you felt when you were doing it, or how does that work?
If I'm lucky enough to have people at the exhibitions, which, you know, I've been lucky to date, I generally, like that's Kieran McCall, like that's Kieran walking around. So I love art. So I'll go to art galleries all the time. I used to sneak out of school into at the top of Parnell Square, Closterware, go into the Hugh Lane and kind of mitch off school and go in and walk around by myself. So I still have that kind of, that's still that Kieran walking around any exhibition, my exhibition, but Pigsy painted the painting, so I'm actually detached from it at that stage. It's on a wall. It's there for people to respond to whichever way they want to, and I respond to it differently as well. Sometimes I become part of the communication because I'm kind of interested to see what the viewer sees. And I suppose my first solo exhibition was called I Find You Fascinating, which was really that. It was me being the center figure, looking out at the viewer, asking, is it you that I find fascinating, or vice versa? And that was kind of a response, I suppose, to that.
You mentioned Collage the Wirra. Is that a Gael skull?
Yeah, it's a Gael skull. It's up on the Navan Road now, as far as I know. It's a mixed school now. Back in the day, it was Catholic, and it was a brother school, so it was all boys. So you'll see a lot of kind of religious kind of stuff come back in for some reason. I don't know why. But when I go into Pigsy mode again, there's always this kind of I find some of the stories in the Bible really fascinating and interesting, and I think they, from a psychological point of view, you can explore that. And then obviously with the Catholic upbringing, you can kind of see what it means to you in the deeper psyche of the mind. and stuff that you've probably pushed down over the years and forgot about, you know, going to church and stuff like that, because I don't really do that now. So it's kind of, they start to come back up, and you can kind of say, well, what does it mean to me now, or what did it mean to me then? You can kind of have this little battle with yourself. And I did a painting called The Extraordinary Crucified for You, which is really looking at, you know, extraordinary people being crucified by the public media, social media, all that kind of stuff in this day and age. And then it's even looking back in the past, but even, you know, other people's icons were crucified even back then. So it's looking at is it okay to be ordinary? You know, everybody wants to be in this fast moving world, wants to be different, or it's okay just, in my view, it's okay just to be yourself, really.
There's only one of you.
Yeah,
Everyone else is taken. Isn't that an Oscar Wilde? And it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And come here. Well, in your case, it might be two, but that's another story.
Yeah,
well. And come here. Where did Pigsy come from?
Pigsy's just an old nickname from my mates that has grown. I've got loads of nicknames. Pigsy just seems to be the one that seems to stick with the painting. I just Flip McCoy. I was the really real McCoy. Basher McCoy. Like, there's loads of nicknames, but when I go into the Pigsy mode, it divides my two worlds between architecture and the art world. So Pigsy's a free flowing artist that doesn't have to really think about regulations and things like that. Kieran has to, you know, abide by the rules as such.
Which is a good way of, you know, kind of splitting it completely, isn't it? You know, that you can go into that mode, I think.
The partition in the mind, really, and it's not something that's let me say, it's something that just happens in a real kind of natural way. I go into the studio, zone out, and I'm just somebody else, really.
Kieran, who really interests you then as a person? If you could invite somebody to a dinner party or to meet, have you anybody you'd love to meet?
Love Elvis. So I'd love to have met Elvis, and especially
the tour around Graceland.
Yeah, well, I've been there.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, especially in his later years. I just I found his sense of style pretty wacky, and his you know, he stayed true to himself, I suppose. I know he had his demons, but who else I would love to have met? Probably someone nuts like Jackson Pollock or Cy Twombly or something like that. I find outsider art really interesting, and especially I suppose people who are in institutions that paint because they have to. And I find that I'd love to be a fly on the wall of some of those. Really, they're not well known. They're becoming well known now, but I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that, just to see how they deal with things within their inner self. I love the psyche. I love the inner mind. I love psychology and all that kind of stuff. I find it interesting. So anybody who paints from that kind of honesty or that kind of inner self, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of that. I have no real hero. I just find everybody interesting. You know, everybody has a story, I suppose. So.
You have a little friend, I believe. I know, again, not that I stalk you. Bones. Yeah, is he staying in Ireland?
No, Bones is coming with us. He is on the plane with myself on next week, so he'll be like me. Both of us be melting in the heat of Spain, so we might need a haircut, the both of us.
And you're going over at a fairly, I know you've been over loads, but you're actually moving over at probably the hottest time as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, we were supposed to be there in March, so I think we got lucky, because at least, you know, we'll only have August to swelter in. But look, we'll stay in the shade. I'll stay in the shade. I have a studio over there with big windows, so I'll open those and And
Get the air in. And have you been around the art museums in Malaga?
I haven't. I've been saving it because the first Monday of every month, I think, is free. So I said I'm going to be on an artist salary, which is nothing. So I'm going to do that whole life paint, and then the first Monday I'll treat myself for inspirational, mental relief.
That's a good idea, yeah. And do you set yourself little carrots like that sometimes where I just have to stay and paint and then I could do something nice? Or is it just that you go in and you really enjoy doing it?
I just really enjoy doing this. It's more of a release,
Right.
It's more of an obsession. And do I enjoy doing it? I don't know if I do enjoy doing it. It's just something that is. It's something you have to do. I have to do anyway. And sometimes I don't want to paint. And again, I don't force it if I don't feel like I've anything to talk about. If Pigsy isn't in there and he doesn't want to come out and chat, he doesn't.
Yeah. There's no point.
Yeah, because I think you can see it on the canvas as well if it's a forced piece of work. And I can see it. I know when I'm kind of when I'm really making myself have a chat with myself or whatever.
Yeah, which isn't. Yeah, it's not authentic. Then it's not the way it usually is.
Now, you're talking about myself having a chat with myself. Was so you can see Pigsy's a big. It's a good way to separate.
Absolutely.
And Pigsy doesn't have any. He doesn't really judge.
And that's the important thing. And I suppose that's a lesson for all of us. And you mentioned earlier on about being, the social media and all the stuff that's on at the moment, and that, be kind. And it's so easy to forget that sometimes and be judgmental of people where, everyone has the right to do whatever they want, don't they?
And that comes, I suppose, with age. You can't, I know myself, I would have been worried, or especially my friends growing up would have been, they kind of hid it for a long time about art and stuff like that because it just would have been, I suppose, not confident enough to tackle that with them, or worried about how they'd slag you or whatever, typical Irish, and but as you get older, the layers of paint came off and the true meaning of the paintings came out. So.
And did they tease you about it?
Yeah, sure. That means they love me though. So
that's it. Yeah, they keep
you
grounded.
If they weren't slagging me, I'd be worried.
Yeah. We all have friends like that. I was at the TV yesterday in a pair of red high heels, and two of my friends were like, "Who are you? Who even are you?"
Yeah. That's it. If they were staying quiet, then I'd be coming back on.
What's wrong?
Yeah. So once they're flagging, I'm okay.
Absolutely. Well, listen, where can people go and see your art?
Design Yard, Ronan in Design Yard he's my main man. It's on South Frederick Street. He has art on the wall there if you want to go in and have a look. You can go to my website, Instagram. So kieranmccoy.com is my website. My Instagram and Twitter handles are Pigsy in Space. And Inspire Gallery. I'm part of a group show called Savage. It's a virtual, real. It's kind of a three-part show. Some of it's virtual, some of it's going to be real, just because of the set of circumstances at the moment. Some fabulous artists in that, and you'll see some really interesting pieces. It's not that. It's a bit of a step outside the standard gallery where, the known names as such, which is really interests me again, because I just think there's so much talent. And Dino in Inspire Gallery is doing some fabulous work. He's really pushing the boat and trying to get some creative open-mindedness in Ireland and not just in Dublin.
Kieran, aka Pigsy, it was a pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you all day. We've only scratched the surface. So we'll follow you on Instagram and everything else and see what you're up to, as long as you don't block me for the serious following. And we look forward to watching your story unfold over the next year on your sabbatical.